Hey folks, Greg Sherman, Mr. Bowtie here. Thanks so much for joining me. As always, make sure you bang home that subscribe button on YouTube. Follow me on Twitter at Mr. Bowtie 1982. Well, it's April, which means two things: tax time and the NFL draft. Well, while I can't help you with your taxes and all the deductions you can take, the NFL draft getting ready to happen. Last year, Alton Robinson was picked in the middle rounds by the Seattle Seahawks out of Judson High. 2 years ago in 2019, Ty Summers became the first San Antonio Reagan alum to be drafted in the NFL draft. He went seventh round to the Green Bay Packers. The Packers have been to the NFC Championship game the last 2 years. So what's going to happen with the NFL draft with three guys that are coming in: Tre'Von Moehrig, Caden Sterns, and Kellen Mond? Well, Ty Summers is joining us from Houston. Well, Ty, first off, 2 years in the NFL, I'm assuming by now you've gotten into your groove, and it's got to bring back a lot of memories, both good and bad, of waiting to get picked 2 years ago.
Yeah, absolutely. It was a very exciting day. As you can imagine, it's something you look forward to your entire life. And I had a different type of expectation for the way it was going to go. But looking back at it, I mean, I couldn't have ended up in a better spot. So I'm just blessed to have, even been drafted at all, to be able to say that I've been drafted. But even more so blessed to be in Green Bay with the Packers.
Yeah, you were pick number 226. Steve Tasker, who played in the Super Bowl 4 times for the Bills, was picked there in '85 by the Houston Oilers. What was it like, I guess, having to wait all the way? I think it was like 5 hours on that Saturday before you finally heard your name called near the end of the draft.
Yeah, it was rough. Had a bunch of family and friends, with me as well. And so we had, again, this expectation that it was going to be sooner. Just from having conversations the day before, so when you go in with that expectation that's so high, and then it just continues to, picks start going and going, teams you thought were going to pick you at this spot start drafting other people. It starts being a little, it's a little upsetting, but at the end of the day, I had no control of that. So I try to keep telling myself, hey, God's going to put me where I need to be. And so that kind of helped me get through it a little bit, but I can't tell you how excited I was when I did get that call. And it was actually a team drafting me, and not a team saying that, hey, if you don't get drafted, we want to pick you up, we want to sign you, all that kind of stuff. So it was a very, very exciting time looking back at it. But I wouldn't want to go through it again.
You went in that seventh round, but I'm curious to know, is it better off going late to a stable franchise like the Packers, who for the most part have been stable their entire existence, versus if you had gone in the earlier rounds, or let's say day two, to a franchise like a Jacksonville or the Jets or even the Cowboys, which has had a lot of instability?
I mean, shoot, after about the first 10 picks, you could still always get drafted by a bad team, once you make the second round. I mean, it's always possible. I could have been picked by Jacksonville in the second round, and it would have been a bummer, because I'd be in Jacksonville, with a team that's not doing so hot right now. But, that could have happened regardless of the round. So obviously I would have liked to add the risk, maybe go earlier. But if I had to choose a team, I couldn't have chose a better franchise. So regardless of what round that was in, if it was the first round, later in the draft, later in the round, or seventh round, it doesn't matter to me as long as I ended up in the right spot, which I believe I did.
Yeah, and the Packers had missed the playoffs the previous 2 years. They had a coaching change when you came in. It's a rare thing for Green Bay to make a change, but they've been to the NFC Championship game 2 years in a row since you got there. So we obviously know when they picked you, that's what finally got them from missing the playoffs all the way to the NFC Championship.
Absolutely, yeah. I'd love to think that I played that much of an impact, but I would have to think that maybe my boy Aaron Rodgers probably played a little bit more of an impact. But hey, everyone has their role, right? And I feel like I contributed.
I thought he was retired and hosting Jeopardy now.
Yeah, I don't know. That's kind of, apparently he's pretty loving it. So we'll see what happens.
Well, the draft is coming up in a couple of weeks. The San Antonio area is going to have three guys drafted, with Kellen Mond, who played at Reagan with you. I think there was 1 year crossover. Tre'Von Moehrig, a teammate of yours at TCU, and then Caden Sterns at Texas, who you probably went up against either at youth ball here in San Antonio or in college when TCU and UT played. First off, it's got to be exciting that you're going to see three guys that are going to enter the draft. Maybe someone will end up with you in Green Bay, or maybe they'll end up at another team in the NFC North.
Yeah, it's very exciting. I actually talked to Tre'Von about it, how cool it would be if, to have him up there with me in Green Bay, because he also knows Vernon Scott, a guy from TCU up there, and myself. So it could be three of us, which would be cool. But at the end of the day, I hope that he's drafted sooner than that, because that would be awesome for him. He's worked really hard. He's a great player. I told him from day one at TCU, first practice, I was like, dude, you are going to be a first-round draft pick someday. I was like, there's no way you're not. And so, because he's not just because of his athleticism, but because of who he is as a person and how he thinks, and how he pushes himself. Like he's set up for success. So I'm super fired up, for him, especially because I have more of a relationship with him. And then, of course, Kellen Mond, I knew him a little bit. I haven't really kept in touch with him, but obviously I've watched how he's done at A&M. He's done a lot of good things, and I'm excited for him as well to have his opportunity, because he's a heck of a player. And I'm just excited to see where they go. Obviously, I would love, to be with some of those guys, but if not, then I wouldn't mind having a little jersey swap when we play against them either.
Yeah, and of course, Caden Sterns, who played at Texas. I'm assuming you guys probably went up against each other at some point, since TCU and Texas both play in the Big 12.
Yeah, we must have. I'm sure we did.
The San Antonio area in football has not done well the last few years. In fact, it's been now 11 years since Malcolm Brown and Steele won a title. But we're seeing a lot of these guys that did not get to the championship game, and in some cases did not make it even the playoffs, like a Marcus Davenport or Josh Reynolds, have success. Why is it that San Antonio guys, for the most part, when they get to the NFL, are having a lot of success versus in high school where maybe they weren't able to get very far in the tournament?
I think it depends. Because football is a sport that you can't just have one really good player and that just takes you all the way. So it's important to have a full team of guys that all 11, they're on the field are going to do their job and do it well, to have that success. And I think that, maybe San Antonio just doesn't have the same, it doesn't push out the same type of athletes that a Houston or a Dallas does. So I think for a lot of times it's more difficult for some guys that are good players that end up succeeding in the league, and maybe they don't have all the pieces around them because they can't do it by themselves, And if they don't have all the pieces to make it that far, it doesn't mean they're not a good player. It just maybe means that there's some more pieces that were needed for that team to succeed. So whenever they got to the next level, surrounded by a lot of good players, Marcus Davenport, Drew Brees, Alvin Kamara, all those guys over there they got over there, it's like that's why they're able to succeed. It's not just because of him, but it's because of all the other guys they got with him as well, the whole team.
Now, when you got picked, I know it was near the end of the draft. The other three guys will be picked probably earlier in the draft. What is for those who maybe don't understand or don't know, what is it like once you get picked? Because certainly you have to probably get a overnight bag packed together and head to a city that you've probably never been to, in your case, Green Bay.
I think that's more so for like first round picks. So Tre'Von might have a chance to do that. I don't know how COVID's going to affect that. But I know guys that were drafted in the first round used to fly that night, up to wherever they were going to be, and they'd have a little kind of ceremony, present the jersey, that whole deal. I've heard of teams doing that, but for anyone that's in like the later rounds, normally, at least for myself, the way the Packers did is I don't even think they had everyone come. They had the earlier rounds come up at a certain time. They had everyone show up like a week later for rookie minicamp, and so that lasted probably 3 days, and we flew back home for a week, and then we flew back up, and then we were there for OTAs. So that's kind of how it worked out. So it's kind of like nice. You get a time to celebrate with your family and friends, kind of hang out, get your mind right, get extra motivated, work out for a week, and then get up there to get to work. But this year is going to be different. I'm pretty sure it's going to be virtual post-draft for a little while. So it'll be similar to last year, where guys are going to be, have their iPads sent to them and introduce themselves through Zoom and go through some meetings, start learning the scheme a little bit. So it'll be, unfortunately, not the full experience for guys this year. So probably more similar to last year, but still an amazing experience nonetheless.
What was the biggest adjustment for you? Because when you're in college, you're playing in the Big 12, but a lot of the guys you played with were guys maybe you played with in high school or against in high school, or guys that you were recruited with, versus going to the pros where you've got guys that are Hall of Famers. We had a Hall of Fame quarterback in Aaron Rodgers, guys that are household names, and even the intimidation factor of playing at Lambeau Field.
That's one of those things that you dream about as a kid, having that opportunity. So it's not so for myself, I was super excited about it. Uh, it was cool to meet those guys and practice against them. 'Cause, some of the best. And, I was able to find success in certain plays, against guys like Aaron Rodgers or there's Aaron Jones, Devontae Adams, and I was like, okay, then I'm doing something right. So it was always a great bar to try to measure up to, just competing with all these guys. So I feel like that's the biggest thing that I've taken away from being a part of that locker room. Just of course, and every time before a game, I always have this routine because you never know how long you're gonna be in the league. And I'll sit in my locker and I'll just take a mental picture of the whole locker room, just like soak it in and be like, all right, this is what I do. This is why I'm here, to play football. And so, just soaking every experience in because it's all special, not a lot of people get to do this. And so I don't want to take it for granted.
What advice would you give those guys, especially when they get their first contract? Because certainly when you get drafted, even if you're a late round pick, you're going to see more money on a check than you've ever seen in your life. And we've seen other NFL guys and pro athletes that go bankrupt. What advice do you give to those guys on finances and all that?
Man, be smart. Don't start buying things that you don't get that won't help keep its value. Don't go out there buying a bunch of cars and for yourself or other people. Or it's always nice to be generous and maybe take people out to eat and stuff, but just be careful, especially for people that want investments or to borrow money, like even if they're close family friends or things and they say they have all these reasons. I've seen that's where guys get broke the quickest, is just giving money out to people that they don't give back. And so I think the biggest thing I could say is just to be smart. Don't go spending it all in one place, and be careful who you share money with.
You went to Green Bay. Obviously, it's a place you probably hadn't been to or hadn't been much that part of the country. What advice do you give to those three guys if they get drafted by somebody besides Dallas or Houston and they end up in a part of the country or that they haven't spent much time in, or maybe even one of those smaller markets like a Green Bay?
I'd say enjoy it. Find the positive, even if it's in a small town, someplace you would never have imagined being in, and make it home as quickly as possible. Because you don't want to feel like you're on the road, staying in an apartment the whole time. Like, you want to make it your home. You want to be able to find things that you enjoy to do there outside of just being in the facility, because it's important to have that and to have people. But shoot, wherever they go, this is my perspective. I was like, I'd be excited to go anywhere. It was a completely new experience. Like, I'm all about, traveling and experiencing new things. And so, if I could tell them, I'd say be open-minded to that and just be positive. And I'm sure they're way super excited too. So I'm sure they'll do just fine regardless where they go.
Now, everybody wants to be a draft prognosticator and say, well, this player is going to go here, this player is going to go there, blah, blah, blah. What have you been telling, especially Tre'Von, who is a projected first-round pick, about the mock drafts? Have you told him just to ignore them, or how do you keep his head on straight? Because we know guys that are going to go in the first round are guys that teams think are going to be that franchise player that's going to change the culture of that franchise or continue to improve it.
Shoot, I would just tell him. I told him basically specifically I was praying for him, wherever he's going to land in the right spot that he needs to be. And I think he's got one of those personalities, and he's driven enough, and he's a good enough athlete that wherever he goes, he's going to end up putting his best foot forward, and he's going to end up being successful. So that's pretty much all I told him. I didn't necessarily tell him about not worrying about where he's going to go, because that's going to just be a natural little anxiety, kind of more excitement than anxiety. Just be like, all right, where the heck am I going to be? And I think that's what makes it fun, because the uncertainty of it. At least that's just my perspective. That's pretty much all that I did actually tell him. Just have fun with it, enjoy it, the whole process.
And Kellen, I think through 2013, your final year at Reagan, when you were playing both ways, quarterback and linebacker, I think he was on the sub varsity because he was a freshman in 13. Have you talked to him much at all? And if so, what have you been telling him? Because quarterbacks certainly separate themselves everywhere else, because everybody thinks the quarterback is the captain of the team, and getting that quarterback pick correct can really alter the state of your franchise.
Yeah, I haven't talked to Kellen in a little while, so I haven't been able to say anything to him specifically about this process. But I wish nothing but the best for him. Again, I think God's going to put him exactly where he needs to be. Biggest thing I can say for him is just to stay focused, on kind of what matters and the priority of what this is. Don't get distracted by all the extra stuff that specialty players like quarterbacks typically deal with. Just, focus on ball.
Yeah, and we're beginning to see a really big fraternity here of guys that are playing in the NFL. Mentioned some of the names earlier, guys you played with, guys you played against in high school and college. Does it kind of add that little extra brotherhood, so to speak, because these guys, some of their stories, and while you may be playing against some of them at the same time, maybe you still text with some of them, maybe you tweet with them, or maybe you share the same desire to continue to see San Antonio grow?
No, it definitely is exciting. I mean, specifically like a guy like Malcolm Brown, I never got the chance to play against him, in high school, or I don't even think in college. I think he had already left Texas by the time I was playing. But he's someone that I've been in touch with occasionally on social media just from being in the league, talking about being from San Antonio and how exciting that is. Looking forward to meeting you, doing that whole thing, and wish the best, so it's cool having those communications with guys. Especially, it's even more exciting whenever I know the guys more personally. Like I had those experiences, like I played against them and all that. But the thing is, I really didn't play against a whole lot of guys when I was from San Antonio. I mean, I knew Marcus Davenport, I knew of him at least, and Tre'Von Moehrig. I never played against him, but I played with him at TCU, so that's a little different. So I don't really have those kind of connections where like, hey, I remember playing. How crazy is it? I played against you in high school, and now we're playing here against each other here, with each other here. So I don't really have any of those connections, but I do have the ones. It's like, hey, I know you're from San Antonio, and I will say that is cool seeing other guys succeed from similar areas that where I'm from.
Let's switch over to basketball and other sports for just a second. There is a rumor out there that you beat Jordan Burns in a track and field race once upon a time, and Burns is going to be an NBA. Jordan Burns of Colgate, who played his high school basketball at Marshall. He was a multi-sport athlete over there with track and field. And I heard rumors that you and him went up in a couple of track and field races back in y'all's day. Is there any truth to that rumor?
Shoot, it might have been true. I'm not sure. That's possible. Ran a lot of races.
Yeah, and the basketball, I know the NCAA tournament just wrapped up here. Kiana Williams winning a title. She played her ball at Wagner before Stanford. Jordan Burns mentioned he's probably going to be a pick in the NBA draft. And while I know you're a football guy, it certainly just has to continue to feel great to see all these local athletes growing in different sports and, again, building up San Antonio.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Well, we know the season's going to get started. I want to talk about you just briefly. 17 games this year, 3 preseason games. How much of an adjustment is that going to be for the veterans who have one extra game that counts, and maybe for those guys that are transitioning in through the draft that they only have 3 preseason games to make their mark instead of 4?
I mean, I think it's kind of crazy because since I've been in the league, I haven't had, going into this season, I haven't had one season that's been similar to the next. I had my first year had 4 preseason games and 16 regular season games. Last year didn't have a preseason game and 16 regular season games. And then now this year, 3 preseason games, 17 regular season games. It's all over the place. So kind of weird to try to find a rhythm, but you got to do what I got to do. Got to make the most of it. So I'm not really worried about the one extra game. Either way, my body's already sore. So I'm not too worried about it. And it's the same amount of games we would have played my rookie year. Because I would have played all 4 preseason, like I'm going to play all 3 preseason games. And if I play all 17, that's still 20 games, just like my rookie year, I played all 4 preseason games and 16 regular season games. So either way, it's still the same amount of games for me. I'm just excited, I'm just excited for another opportunity, preseason to go out there, and I know I'm going to get more reps for sure, regardless if I'm starting during regular season or not. So I'm excited to have that opportunity to do that. And, just ready for it to get here already.
Oh, absolutely. I'll get you out of here on this one. Your buddy Aaron Rodgers is now hosting Jeopardy. I know you're a big game show enthusiast. Any advice you gave him, or are you actively been watching him and seeing if that's going to be his next career?
I will say I saw a couple older clips just on social media because everyone was talking about him doing Jeopardy. Social media of him when he was on Jeopardy. I was really impressed with how good he did. I was like, I mean, I know he's a smart guy, but I was like really surprised he would know all that random stuff that he knew. So that didn't surprise me though, but pretty cool. So I need to check out an episode while he's on there as the host, because I haven't seen him so far. I haven't logged in.
You mean when he was a contestant, he didn't walk onto the podium, ringing the buzzer and say, "Alex, I'd like to buy a vowel"?
What'd he say?
I said he didn't ring in when he was a contestant back in the day, ring in and say, "Alex, I'd like to buy a vowel" from Wheel of Fortune.
Oh, gotcha. Yeah. I don't watch many game shows.
Well, the game show era was back in the 80s when I was your age growing up and all that stuff. But Ty, really appreciate it. It's always interesting to see how the draft plays out and see where those guys go. Hopefully one of them maybe will end up with Green Bay. If not, maybe one will end up in the NFC North. You get to play them twice a year. And Ty, it's been a pleasure to catch up with you, and look forward to seeing you some more during the offseason.
Yes, sir. Thanks enjoyed talking to you.